That's a really hard talk to follow. Okay. So, hi. Yes, I couldn't remember my title either. So, hi, I'm Jane Ruffino, content strategist, UX strategist, content designer, researcher. I don't know, depends on the day. I'm also very excited. I'm kind of obsessed with being in the Barbican. These are my main reasons for living and working. I've been a consultant for most of my career, even during the hiring boom, which was sometimes touch and go, but it's been part deliberate choice, part kind of responding to prompts, as Elizabeth spoke about this morning. But I've also kind of always done a bit better with this like inside-outside perspective. I think sometimes I've been an immigrant for most of my life, so I think that sort of helps. But I also relate to this North American classic, the raccoon, AKA Trash Panda. I love them. They have thumbs, which make them very powerful. They are cute, so sometimes people feed them on purpose. But they are scavengers, and as a consultant, I have to be kind of a scavenger. And the thing that scavengers do is they know the neighborhood. They know what's safe, what's dangerous, and I'm going to talk about some of the things that I have learned as I started to learn to leverage this and stop feeling like, oh, I'm not a real person, I'm just a fake raccoon. And this, being part of all kinds of organizations and relationships. So these are the animals you're going to meet throughout this talk. But the focus is, one of the things I want to get out of the way is I do not want this to be read as like everyone should be doing exhausting, uncompensated leadership work. No, just to do our jobs, not a chance. But I also want to make some space to talk about how leadership doesn't always look like a management role and what that's been like for me. So the first one I'm going to talk about, I'll go into detail, navigating politics doesn't make you inauthentic. This one's going to be hard to take in for a minute until I explain it. Most people want to do a good job. And it's relationships all the way down. So the title of this talk came from a retro I was in a couple months ago where one of the developers acknowledged me for herding all the cats. He said he was also very excited that got used in my talk title. And forgetting like a huge bunch of people into a room, all had very valid perspectives that did not all align, and just helping everyone get to a decision. But I mean, I feel like that's kind of our job, is creating alignment beyond anything else that we actually deliver. And I've also argued quite often that what we do as content strategists, as content people, is exhausting in part because the emotional labor that we're always doing is already a leadership skill. But it also felt really good for me to be acknowledged. And it's nice for me because being a good facilitator is something that I work at actively. And I want to just explain my definition of facilitation, because a lot of people associate it with running workshops or meetings because you need a facilitator to have a good one, but it's also a way of orienting yourself in situations. So good facilitation has a lot in common with good leadership, making space for others, leading people to alignment, kind of engineering interactions, being able to see a mess and not panic, or like get over your panic quickly because you know you have a toolbox. So in other words, facilitation is not a temporary condition of being in charge of something. It is a way of approaching situations that can help you feel a little more of your own agency, even if the outcome isn't that people will see you as a leader, although it's likely they'll start to. And I've also never felt comfortable being called a leader or calling myself a leader. I feel like it's something you have to have bestowed on you, like Elizabeth talked about opportunities. And I also have this like thing of like when I was a teenager and I was like, I can't call myself a punk. That's for like someone else to call me. Like, who let you in here? But being a facilitator is a set of skills, and I can work on those. So I feel like I can claim that one. And maybe you're already doing some of this. But first, I want to talk about some things I have done badly, because I've messed up, and I mess up a lot, and I'll probably mess up again. So here are some things. The first one is the biggest mistake that I'm sure we've all made. Being right, oh my God, it's so toxic. When I wanted to be right and everyone to see me as right, and even when I was like historically monumentally right, like torching relationships in the pursuit of righteousness, terrible. Assuming the wrong intent, but in the other direction, like underestimating someone else's contempt for me has also gone wrong. pushing things without fully understanding the constraints and making people feel powerless, like, oh, that's not good, and there's like 15 reasons that this decision was made. Defining good without really bringing people along with me, like making style guides and not really socializing them. But also waiting too long to fire clients, blaming myself for things that were not in my control. And of course, in life as in love, you can't fix him, not ever. And I've had to learn all these the hard way because I'm a consultant. I work without a net. I work without a manager. I don't have like an HR person I can go to when like the head of sales sits at the lunch table and like says terrible things about immigrants. I live in Sweden. That happens often. I have to be really aware of power dynamics and where I sit in them. So the best thing I've learned is to invest in my relationships, which is good because I'm a people person. And it's also helped me stop seeing anything as stakeholder management. It's such a transactional and utilitarian approach to people, which is sometimes needed, but it's not a good blanket label. So here's some stuff I actively try to practice. So navigating politics doesn't make you inauthentic. So about 10 years ago, I went to this creative leadership workshop at a place called Design Gym in New York. Maybe you've heard of it. The facilitator boiled everything down to one thing, which was figuring out how to do what was needed, making a little space in an interaction or situation to take a step back and ask a single question. What is needed here? And I was like, fuck this shit. Sorry, is this a swearing conference? That's a Tori Podmajersky quote. I was annoyed. I was like, what is this one weird trick? I like paid for a workshop. Is this all we're gonna get? But that one little thing was really packed with meaning because the important part of that question is the syntax. It's not, what do I need to do? It's about taking a step back, surveying the landscape, and seeing maybe I'm not the person who's needed. So raise your hand if you've ever said something like, I'm bad at internal politics, or I hate internal politics. Please, I hope hands go up. Okay, phew. That's me. I hate them too. But I was working a couple years ago with a client. She was so good at it. I was like taking notes. Every day is a school day. I was used to like leaning on someone's credibility because sometimes it's not me that it needs to be heard from. But she was like, I'd never seen anything like it. And one day she turns to me and she goes, yeah, I'm really bad at politics and I can't read a room. And I'm like, I'm sorry, is it opposite day? What's happening? But I think I understood where she was coming from. Like from our perspective, we were working together. I was learning from the best about how we navigate a political landscape. We weren't playing politics. We were navigating a political landscape because we didn't have a choice and we needed to get things done. So it hasn't made things more stressful. It's actually helped me to sometimes kind of sit back and be a capybara, which ideally I hope I don't have natural enemies or predators, but capybaras don't. Or other ways of doing things, like on another occasion, there was a senior person who was doing some micromanaging, and it's like, this doesn't really align with my experience of this person, so let's like dig in. So we took a step back, and we realized we were actually pretty aligned. We didn't really understand what was wrong. So we agreed. The next time the work was presented, I said, you guys go in there like a pack of golden retrievers. Distract them with the relentless joy of a golden retriever at her own birthday party. This is Bobby. I was at this party because we thought it might short circuit some of the concerns. And I wasn't in the meeting because sometimes I'm not in meetings because I'm a consultant. But I was told they seemed onto us but rode the wave, and it worked. And so in a way, sometimes not reading the room is just short circuit it. Be a golden retriever. It's fine to hate politics, but only people with a ton of unearned privilege can move through the world and pretend that they're not affected by them. So now I'm just more conscious of how I show up. So what I always say is the one thing I need is somebody who will tell me the truth about what kind of fires there are. So, because every place is messy, every place has two types of fires. First, there's the trash fire. And these are pretty annoying, but if left unchecked, they can spread, but they're usually containable. And sometimes people will be really grateful that you put them out. And then there's the tire fire. And no tire fire is an accident. This thing was burning before you came, and it will be burning afterward. And somebody has an interest in keeping that fire burning. That is a feature, not a bug. Don't breathe them in. You have to navigate around it. Don't try to put it out. And that's a really important lesson that, again, I've learned the hard way. And I should say a coal seam fire would be a better analogy, but it's like less punchy, and most people haven't heard of them. But doing this, like what is needed here, has helped me to think about who I need to bring into a process. What sort of part of myself do I need to show up with, and let go a little bit of being right as a success indicator, which is a really hard one, which is why it's in the middle. It helps me with this one. Most people want to do a good job. I know, you're screaming inside. How many of you instantly thought of a person that you've worked with, or maybe you're working with right now, who's deliberately incompetent and probably deliberately wants to make you miserable? Like, you can raise your hand, it's fine. They're there, they exist. This is not this. This is toxic. That is toxic. It is loaded with bias reinforcement. It will come back to bite you. But starting from most people, not everybody, not those people you thought of, want to do a good job is, for me, a healthier and more productive assumption, because it helps me start from a place of curiosity. What does a good job look like to the people around me? It might be prioritized differently from mine. It might directly conflict, which is why, like, no, you can't add friction to that payment step because growth. Some people aren't resourced to do the job that they think is good, and they might be having a hard time. Sometimes I can help with that, and that's when it gets really good, and that's when you can actually, that can lead you to a really good collaboration. Sometimes it might not matter to them. That's also a useful data point. And sometimes it involves undermining other people and hoarding all the credit. It helps me remember where my boundaries are. It helps me to get into a facilitative space where I'm kind of saying, like, tell me more, and maybe they get to this idea, okay, maybe it's not a great idea. Or helping them rubber duck their way to a win, and then everybody feels a sense of achievement. It's also helped me do things like deliberately open up cans of worms. Like, okay, everybody just tell me your worst fears. Let's get it out on the table. And I had a situation once, not too long ago, where there was like this issue that was coming up for like 2 years, over and over again. I was like, all right, I am gonna open that can of worms. Let's do it. And if we achieve this together, if I open the can and we get this done, I get the Golden Can Opener Award just for opening the can. And we did do it. I haven't got my award yet. I trust I will. But sometimes nothing works. Like, sometimes things just don't work. And I think we don't talk enough about it. I had a situation a couple years ago where there was like another senior woman whose approach to a good job was clean house and bring in my old team. And she was walking around going, that Jane, she's not too bright, is she? Because I asked so many questions. It was a weird situation. So I have been doing all these things, like building relationships and doing what I was expected to do, and this was all happening. And then I remembered I had a call with her once where she mentioned her dog, and I was like, oh, cool, what kind of dog? And she was like, I don't like the dog. I don't want the dog. I make my ex-husband pay for the dog. I never trust anyone who wants to get rid of the dog, right? Because I'm the dog also. But I also left with good, real relationships. And I think I left with mostly goodwill. And that's because this is the shortest one. It's relationships all the way down. And I want to emphasize this because none of this is down to, like, there's no one weird trick, right? Like, what is needed here only works and has only worked for me when I have been working with or around people who also want to build relationships with me. That's the success factor. Like, there's no actual secret sauce. All I can do with that little trick is make space for relationships to be built. But because I've shifted the focus, I still get to keep those relationships. And another fun thing, as you might know, I'm also doing my PhD on subsea cable infrastructure. And the main thing I have learned is that the most important parts are not technical. Whether it's a challenge or a win, everything is down to collaboration, human-to-human relationships. Even the most complex networks of engineering are all relationships. So, the final animal in the menagerie is the glorious pigeon. Most organizations see us, the workers, as flying rats who should be subject to population control. That is just a reality. But pigeons are great. They are smart, they are collaborative, they survive and adapt because they come together when they're under threat. And as I tell my daughter, who has somehow recently been influenced by pigeon haters, Pigeons deserve to live here as much as we do. Pigeons know the city doesn't belong to them and all they have is each other. And that is true as well for us. Relationships belong to us. All we have is community. So now what? I bet you want something practical. So I'm bringing you a little bit of something practical. But the first thing is, like, leadership isn't a job title. I've never had like a leadery job title. Like I have, but not much. But I think if you sit and you think like who around you has leadership qualities, that's not going to neatly line up with people who have leadership roles, who have like management titles. It's empathy, being principled, knowing how to read a room, people with integrity that we can trust. That's what we think is a leader. So the main goal of all of these facilitative approaches is just to make space. It's not to do uncompensated leadership work just to do your job. It's to accept the work you're already doing is already leadership work, even if you don't have a title. And facilitation is about making space for each other, knowing it could all go to shit. And as Anjana talked about this morning, it's just a job, right? Like when it gets that bad, it's just a job. And when we make space for relationships, we can actually realize all the power that we have. So how do I apply all this, right? So the first one is obvious, running workshops if you get the chance, but like some people are super workshopped out and there's like real lived like workshop trauma from bad workshops in a lot of companies. For me, doing this kind of thing helps me worry less about like the seat at the table, because when you're the facilitator, your job is to set the room, like set the vibe of the room. You don't need a seat at the table. But then there's just like conversations and emails, like how can you take that step back? And just to be really clear, this is not about like feigning neutrality and coming in and pretending that you're neutral and you don't have a perspective. That's just gonna make people not trust you. It comes off as kind of like weird and queasy. It's about asking people, it's about like involving yourself, but in a way that's not intrusive and weird. But like talking about pros and cons and not trying to force your perspective on others, but like make it safe to say, I don't know. And also handling feedback. How we handle feedback is really important. Knowing what to apply and what to put in the bin. And whenever I was teaching, I would always use this example of like, sure, feedback is a gift, but some gifts are underpants for your hands. And you can sit there and you'd be like, thank you, and then like throw it in a bin, re-gift it. You don't need it. It was not for you. It was not thoughtful. You don't need to keep it. And then the next one is handling conversations with yourself. How do you talk to yourself? Like, are you sitting there ruminating, being a seagull? Sometimes it's a good thing to be single-mindedly turning the world into your adversary and like food source through thievery. Or are you like the other end of the spectrum, which can also sometimes be like not the best, even though capybaras are the best, but like being too much of a friend to everyone without a perspective. But what stories are we telling ourselves? And that is why this kind of stopping to ask myself what is needed here, like, man, I can't believe that one thing that I was so mad about in that workshop actually turned out to be a really good idea. So a lot of this work is just what we do in content and design work. Like this is just the job, right? Like taking in lots of inputs, curating what's needed, creating a space for experiences to happen. It's literally just what we do. But the biggest benefit for me of being able to make this space is that whatever these skills that I've started to like more intentionally nurture in myself, I feel like I can get to whatever the next phase of my career is. Like maybe it's staying in UX, maybe it's something completely different, like policy, advocacy work, which I've been really interested in lately. Like, I don't feel this desperate need to cling to the walls of UX. I don't feel like I need to leave or stay. It's fine. I am a happy raccoon. There's kibble where I am. I've got my skunk friend. And if the food dries up and a bunch of like loser raccoon haters move in, I will find kibble. I am skilled at finding kibble. I know how the neighborhood works. Unfortunately, I am actually still allergic to cats terribly, which is awful. I hate having a cat allergy. But it helps me because it's like, and it's hard, right? Through this and also like a lot of therapy. Being able to live with the like honesty that actually it's healthier and better to be somebody who is less invested in needing to be right, and a better success metric is how many dog birthday parties are you invited to. That's actually better. And also having this identity as a professional problem solver, but bringing those parts of myself together a bit more. And just as a final note, that's my dog. I realized he was not in this presentation except in the first slide. So I was like, you need a lot of pictures of Luce. He's my crusty little baby, and I love him. So thank you. That's me.